Okay, hello. I can't even speak today already. It's terrible. Hi, everybody, and welcome. It's the Midweek Marketing Mix. My name is James Dearsley, the founder of the Digital Marketing Bureau, and welcome to this week's show. I hope you enjoy it. We've certainly been having some great conversations inside, and just a couple of sort of shout outs already. We'll see if my Hangout toolbar is working today. So we've got Mel coming in saying should be fun. Thanks, Mel. Typically, look at that, it switches off at the last time. So my screen share isn't working today. So Mel, welcome. Susan, I know you're in here as well. She's saying lots of great HOAs all at the same time this morning. So I hope you'll switch to this one for sure. Lee Rickler's put in a very cryptic question, which I don't know anything about. But Lee, I will bring that in to Chris, and let me just sort of use that as the introduction to the panel. We have got the wonderful John Dietrich from G Plus Geek, who's joining us for, I think, the second or third time, John, I think. Is that right? Second or third?
Something along those lines. I can never remember. It's great to be here, though. Thanks for having me.
No, it's a pleasure, John. Pleasure. You're always welcome. And then we've got Villy, first time, debutante, I think.
Yeah.
Hi, Villy. Welcome. So that's great. And then
nice to meet you guys, and thank you for having me here.
It's a pleasure. It's really good to have you. So it's another one of the Brit packs, so it's great to have. And then we've got Chris. So Chris is from Snipley, and we'll be talking to Chris a lot later on with a cryptic question. I can't wait for that one. So, this is the Midweek Marketing Mix, and as many of you know, it's basically a quick fire roundup of all the latest social and digital marketing news. Basically, the aim is to give you as much as we possibly can in as little time, and we bring on what I call as my influencers, the guys who I think actually talk a lot of sense in their field, and that's why they're here. We break it up into 10-minute segments. Basically, each person takes a specialist area. So, for example, this day, John is taking the world of Google and Google+. Villy is taking basically the entire world of social, but I think there's a lot on Twitter at the moment. So we're going to spend a lot of time talking about Twitter today. Sure. Now, just a few little bits of sort of housekeeping. We are using the Showcase app, and everything is switched on today. So if you are watching this live, in the Showcase app, everything that we are referencing today is on there now. So if you want to sort of read ahead of the conversations we're going to have, please do. There's a lot of information in there on the right or left-hand side for you. If you're watching a recorded version of this, there should be a little button just down here which says be part of the conversation. It doesn't mean you're going to join us. It just means that you will start to see all the links that we are perhaps referencing as we go forward into this show today. So I hope you'll join me. Also on that point, if you're on Google Plus and you want to talk and you want to leave comments and questions and criticisms and everything nice like that, there's a little box above my head somewhere, which is a little tiny box with an arrow in it. Please do tick that box, and then you'll be able to put anything you want into the event page, and we can bring it into the discussion. So please do that. I've got a whole load of stuff kicking around, which is great. So look, let's sort of kick off really with the world of Google, Google Plus, and everything else that is Google. John, it's been a relatively busy time, I think. What's been happening? What's out there?
It is interesting. I mean, what's funny to me about all the news, anytime I see new news about Google and Google Plus, which is often, people say, oh, Google Plus is dying, it's going away, you know, we're not going to see it, which is something that TechCrunch is kind of saying with their announcement of the Odyssey acquisition by Google, which is a really interesting acquisition, I think. Odyssey was, until very recently, an app on the App Store and in Google Play that allowed people to do photo backups and video backups to their local computers. And then also, they had proprietary algorithms that allowed them to cache certain of those videos and images to the internet. So you would have access to those that Odyssey thought you would be most interested in seeing again. So anyway, Google purchases this company just a few days ago, and then TechCrunch starts saying, oh, well, you know, this is probably an indication that Google Photos is going to be spinning off into its own thing, and that, of course, means that Google Plus is dying. When, in fact, Google has even confirmed that the team will be a part of the Google Plus team. So this is a very integrated approach that Google is taking, with Google Plus at the center of things. And to me, you know, since the beginning, Google Plus has focused on photos, knowledge graph results, photos, and I think, and machine learning, which is another very interesting aspect to Google. There's not been any very recent information about machine learning, but I know that Google is using machine learning to understand images and to understand people and their communications and how they interact through images. There's a lot of information in images that I think other photo services that maybe Facebook are providing or Yahoo. There's a lot of photo services out there, but I think Google has a unique ability to understand photos in a way that other companies simply don't have. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some of that coming to Google Plus in the next 3 to 6 months. And there was another bit of news a few weeks ago that Eric Enga surfaced about this machine learning and machine learning coming to Google Plus. I'll have to dig that back up, and I'll pop a link in if anyone's interested in that. But I think that photos and machine learning, Google Plus, this is all kind of combined.
I'll tell you what though, John, just picking up on the point, I mean, you mentioned about TechCrunch, just to give the audience a little bit of information about it, because TechCrunch, we seem to be talking about them almost weekly at the moment, because they're either predicting the death of one platform or the death of another. It seems to be a particularly sort of negative journalism stories about something. I think last week we mentioned them about the death of Ello, and the fact that Ello hasn't taken off and killed off Facebook by now means it's the death of Ello. I mean, the fact is, you know what? It isn't. But they just seem to have this point. But you know what? It's a funny one. I mean, we mentioned about how Google Plus, I mean, there's been a lot of rumors about how certain areas, i.e. Hangouts, will be decentralized from Google Plus, Photos will be decentralized from Google Plus, and it will become almost a bit of a free-for-all on various different component parts of Google Plus. Do you know what? I think that's a fantastic move, because ultimately, you know, if people aren't necessarily harnessing the power of Google Plus in its entire entity, of its entire layer, what they've got to start to do is they've sort of got to entice people in certain areas which they understand, which is ultimately video streaming and photo stuff. And actually, to just bring that onto another bit of news which has happened this week, which I was going to bring in later, was this whole voice over IP world that we are now in, and what allows us to do this very thing here is part of the reason why WhatsApp. I mean, WhatsApp this week have just announced the news that they are finally putting in process their voice call service. So you've got, in the last month, you've got Twitter with voice call, you've got WhatsApp with voice call. You know, it's just one of these things now, and Google have to compete. So spinning this stuff off as a single entity, as separate entities, for me, do you know what? That's not a bad thing. I think TechCrunch have got to go over the fact that that doesn't mean anything bad. If nothing else, it means Google are going after the audience. So one of those things. But anyway, so what does Odyssey mean then? I mean, basically, it's all about offline photo sharing and indexing of photos and images, right? I mean, is there anything that we can learn from this at all?
Well, photos, yes. That's something that I'm seeing most of the news articles. You know, they're focusing on the photo aspect, but videos is also a part of this. So I think, you know, and to me, videos is just an extension of photos. So it's like an even broader image viewing type experience that Google is bringing to their audience, because people like photos and videos, and it's interesting that there's a little bit of a privacy aspect to this. People are maybe concerned with so much of their data being in the cloud, and this Odyssey acquisition is perhaps Google saying, look, guys, this is your data after all. It will be on your local machine. But we would like to help you use it better, you know. So that's an interesting little aspect that I think is an important one. I'm always seeing Google being very careful with people's data, and I think that's a good move.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so that's one bit of news. So Odyssey is obviously coming in. Now, you shocked me. You sort of prompted me on something today, literally before we sort of came in here, which I hadn't seen anything about. So I'm flying a bit blind here. You mentioned about this change in knowledge graph, which is kicked in. So I'm going to try and share the post on the screen here while you're talking about it. What's happening? What's been going on there?
Okay, well, this one that I just saw recently, but it's something that's kind of been brewing in the background since Google I/O last year. So there's been a few months. They announced a new service for basically collating medical data that's being provided by these wearable devices and by phones. Google's got this smart contact lens project they've been working on to collect glucose levels. So Google really, this is not new. What's new about it is the knowledge graph result. So basically the news is they will be providing medical facts in Google search results directly, rather than just links to articles and things. They've actually got a team of doctors who have reviewed and researched this information, and they'll be providing, basically providing answers directly in search to medical questions. So that's that's the news. But the back end,
that's a big step, right? I mean, it's a bit controversial, I would think, right?
It is, yes, and that's something I say. So Apple is also kind of in this space. They've got a system they're calling HealthKit, and HealthKit is where basically their database system of sharing this information that they're collecting with their health app. They're sharing this information with healthcare providers, and of course they also have an API, which means that third-party apps could have access to this data. Now, this is very personal data. I mean, this is like, how many calories you're burning every day, your heart rate, potentially glucose levels once those sensors are out. So, yeah, there's some privacy concerns for sure, and they're not being ignored. They're definitely being talked about. Google's got their Fit service. Samsung, I think, even has a service that will be attempting to provide the data that's being collected from these sensors to people and make it helpful to them.
Yeah, Christ, I tell you what, don't even get me started on it, because I mean the whole world of the quantified self is becoming more and more and more likely, and there is a massive battle. I can't even remember what it is, but I mean certainly the best-selling items over Christmas this year is certainly in the UK with the health bans and all this sort of stuff. But this is only growing in importance. I wonder if this is an early stage sort of move for that. But one of the big concerns for me is, I mean, only last week in the UK there has been a massive directive from the government for people to stop looking up symptoms on the internet. What we call GPs, general practitioners, doctors, are saying to patients, please don't do it. Which
Yeah.
I don't understand it. I mean, the fact is, I've even sat in a GP surgery, a doctor's surgery, where I've explained my symptoms, and they've gone onto Google and typed it in. So I'm sort of sitting there going, that's not what I want.
Now they'll be getting their answers more quickly, and so will you. I think that's good for a person, a patient, an individual to be informed. And I think Google providing information that has been reviewed by doctors. I mean, this is not, homeopathic. Although I myself am a big fan of homeopathic, that's a whole other world. They're focusing in on what we know as the human race, about medical conditions, strep throat, pink eye, basic stuff. We know certain things about it, and so Google is saying, look, we've got doctors who have reviewed this information. If you've got some of these symptoms, we can provide you with information very quickly, which you can take to your doctor and hopefully get better care as a result of the information you now know. I think it's really good.
Fascinating argument, that one. I'm not sure what to take of it. It's a bizarre one. I'm all for information.
Yep.
And again, you know what? The other fascinating thing is that my healthcare system is different to yours. So
yeah.
that
Although
has a
they're
different
getting more
demand.
similar, I think.
Well, yeah, I think we're trying to combine at some point, but who knows? Who knows? Okay, well look, that's great. I mean, it's we've got some comments on here. I'd actually be fascinated if you guys agree or disagree with whether or not Google should be starting to display medical-based information. I would be fascinated by your opinions if you're watching this. Certainly we've got Zara here saying individuals need to stay medically informed. Doctors do not have all the answers. Yeah, that's fair enough. I only hope that Google does. That's the sort of the challenge, I suppose, isn't it? Okay, interesting. If you've got opinions on that, do let me know. I'm particularly sort of interested in that. Good morning to Susan from New Zealand. Hi, you've joined us. Hi, Tigran, you've joined us, which is very kind of you. Hi, guys. Like I said, if you're just joined in and you want to pass comments on what we're talking about, there's a little button here with an arrow in it. So do click that, and it will open up the event page if you're looking at this in Google+. So please do join us in that. Okay, well, look, so that's sort of like two basic news of Google+ and Google in itself. I just sort of want to bring in now probably the biggest news of the last couple of weeks, and there's been an awful lot of traffic on this discussion, and that's surrounding this whole Google and Twitter making friends. So I think this is going to be a bit of a three-way conversation here, which is we sort of got Villy in here, we got John in here. But John, do you want to just kick us off with, what actually has happened? Twitter and Google are making friends. What's going on?
Well, this is a deal that they had together back in 2011, and it's kind of a resurfacing of it. Basically, Google will be able to, they call it the fire hose of Twitter, because there are an innumerable number of tweets going on every day on Twitter, and now Google will have direct access to those tweets. So they'll be able to apply their algorithms and their understanding of information and surface those tweets in search directly and based on your queries. So this is something that will benefit Twitter and Google obviously together because they'll be able to serve more targeted ads, right? That's where they make their money. I mean, Google is an advertising company, mostly, and Twitter would like to get in on some of that. And Twitter has, I think I've heard recently, not seen the kind of growth that other social networks have seen. So this, could potentially be a way of saying, hey, Google's got something like 4 billion searches going on per day. I would like, Twitter would be saying, I want to get in on some of those searches, and so it's a very interesting deal.
What do you think, Billy? Where are you positioned on this? I mean, in your opinion, what's going on? And in fact, I've muted you because there was a bit of an echo before, so let me just unmute you while you're going. Is that the quite fun? Oh, no, there you go. Right, Billy, what do you think?
I hope there's no echo right now.
No, you're good.
Well, for me, basically, Twitter, apart from trying to attract audience, it's trying to attract brands as well, more brands into its platform. So this deal with Google could help advertisers gather more data that could be used for better tailoring, better tailored solutions, such as better targeting and further segmentation. That's what I see here. It could also, take off some pressure off of Twitter with the searching of tweets and all this. So these are my first initial thoughts, but given that it won't roll out in the next couple of weeks, I will have to see what sort of information more we will get about this new development, and just see how Twitter is going to use this strategy and this new synergy with Twitter and Google.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I have a rather strong opinion on this in the sense that over the last, I don't know, what we're talking about, month, 2 months, we've seen Twitter, I mean, innovation after innovation after innovation in terms of, these Twitter cards where you can start to buy things, where you can start to promote things on Twitter there and then, so people don't have to leave the platform to go and do things. It was almost, in my opinion, Twitter was almost like a reciprocal to send people elsewhere, which was obviously not working for the platform because it meant dwell times and advertising was never going to work on twitter.com. So they've just been innovation everywhere with what they're doing at the moment. And so for me, I don't know, I just have this opinion that this is an absolute classic growth strategy in the sense that they need traffic.
Yeah.
We know, I mean, John, you alluded to this, which is that
Yep.
their traffic is literally stationary. They're not getting the users that they need. They're a publicly run company now. They are getting an awful lot of pressure to start making a whole barrel of money. And if you haven't got users coming in, you're not going to get it. So, I mean, that's my opinion. I don't know if you agree with that, Philly, in the sense of it is a pure out-and-out growth strategy.
Yes, in fact, I agree. And it's true that I don't remember the last Q report that Twitter published that wasn't alarming in terms of traffic and user growth and retention. So, yes, it has been a series of let's say, how can I put this, not so good reports for Twitter. It hasn't been growing really. Its business plan has not been clear really. So analysts, stock market analysts, are getting more demanding.
Because I also, from what I understand of this as well, is that what this is giving Twitter, well, it's actually giving two things. John, you mentioned this about what Google gets out of this. Google beforehand, if I'm correct, they couldn't index many tweets because they wanted to do it, but they couldn't index.
There's too many. They can't. There are too many tweets going on daily for them to crawl it in a traditional sense. Because they can. It's public data, so they can crawl it like they crawl a website. But there are way too many tweets going on for that to actually work. So this is Twitter actually providing the feed directly to Google, and I mean, yeah, it allows them to provide tweets in the stream that are relevant to the searches being made. So so that drives obviously the qualified traffic to Twitter, but it allows Google to display this kind of zeitgeist information in search. It's very, Twitter is kind of the what do they call it? The message board of the world, right? Breaking news happens there, celebrity gossip, all the latest stuff often breaks on Twitter. Well, now Google will have access directly to that to display in search related to what's being searched. So this is huge for targeting audience and ads. I think it's a really interesting move, very, very good move, I think, for both Google and Twitter.
Oh, it's a total win-win, right? It's an absolute win-win. And just interestingly, just sort of bringing up the whole point of why it's a massive growth strategy on Twitter's side is they need the new users, and the point here is it means that if it's showing in Google search, it will drive people towards Twitter, even if they're not logged in. They don't have what they call a logged out user. So anybody can view these real-time search tweets. And the idea being is obviously from Twitter's perspective, it's almost like having a landing page for every single live tweet, which has a massive call to action, which is sign up. And I'm going to bring on into a minute that for me, Twitter at the moment are having a massive retention and growth strategy, which we'll come on to about what's called the instant timelines, which I want to chat with Vili about. But for me, that is this is the growth part of this strategy, which is let's get as many people to see what Twitter's all about now by giving them real search options through Google, which is where 60, 70%, up to 80% of the world search is dependent on the country they're looking at. And we'll give them the information they want as soon as possible.
And they arrive on Twitter in a very targeted way. That's one of the problems that Twitter has faced is people get to Twitter, and it's a similar thing people sometimes face on Google+. What's going on here? Where's the conversation that I'm interested in? I see all this stuff, but none of it's really relevant to me. Well, if you go to Twitter from a search that you've done on Google, that's imminently relevant to you. So you're on Twitter now in a very relevant way, which is big for Twitter.
So it's ultimately contextual, right?
Yeah.
Well, if we also combine this move with Twitter's attempts to reach new audiences and emerging markets, this could really mean that Twitter now has opened the door to a brand new audience, that their first experience with internet will be on Twitter.
But do you know what interests me about this, which is, and I don't know if any of you have had a chance to have a read of this, which is the report that Stone Temple Consulting put together about basically what tweets are going to be indexed by Google. And I find that fascinating because if I'm correct, and Vili, do correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, there is a wealth of information, and please do, if you're looking at this, check out in the Showcase app, this app by Mark Traphagen and Eric Enger, where they did a survey of 133,000 different tweets to basically find out the story. What is Google going to be indexing? Because even though they've opened up this fire hose or the API behind the scenes, they cannot. I mean, it would be almost impossible to index every single tweet known to man. It just wouldn't work. So they're obviously picking and choosing which tweets to show. And I think one of the big takeaways was the fact that it's really there's a massive surge of chance of you getting indexed if you've got more than 10,000 followers. I think wasn't that one of the points, Vili?
Well, I think so, but my take here is that Google will index first influential accounts and influential tweets. So this means that tweets that receive lots of engagement and mean something, and they're considered something like as milestones or something, and influential big accounts, because as you said, James, it wants to be the world's biggest landing page.
Yeah, that's great. I'd love to take credit for that one.
Yeah.
I think I've got to give that to John.
Oh yeah.
John, I've got to give that to you, man. I'd love that one, but no, you did the Twitter being the world's largest landing pages. That's fully in you.
Look, no, it's a fascinating move. It's a great conversation. Yeah, definitely interesting. Very interesting. And it's interesting, Bill, you mentioned this isn't happening now. This is what, a few months out?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's something.
Maybe it will take more than 6 or 7 months. That's what I know.
Okay.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, for the benefit of the people at home who actually may not have read this, but this is actually the article that Stone Temple have done. Let's just see if I can enlarge this. Can you guys see this okay? Is it all right, or shall I just?
Yeah, it looks good.
I'll just try and enlarge it a little bit if I can. But this, so these are sort of some of the indicators. These are like the key takeaways that I've taken from this report. So they've indexed here. You'll be able to see 128,000 tweets, which they've. They've analyzed 138,000 tweets. They found that only 7.4% of the tweets were actually indexed by Google. So, it's under 10% are being indexed. And that's an important point. So not every tweet is being indexed. The second point, it was right. So what they're saying here is of that number of tweets which were in fact indexed, what they're looking at here is that the people with more than 1 million followers, 21% of the total indexes come in here. So now, I don't know if this is a bit contentious here by Google or not, but what they're basically saying is that people with a lot of followers are more influential than people with not a lot of followers.
There's a lot of factors they take into account, though. There is a correlation here, and he talks about this being a correlation, but there's more to it than just follower count. It tends to be that people with large follower counts have the type of engagement that leads to it being an authority profile. But I think there's more there than just the number that Google looks at.
Yeah. You're right. I've gotten ahead of myself. It is but one of many things which I'll just carry on going through. But it's certainly an indicator which I don't know. I picked that up and I thought it's interesting. I would love actually to then take this little graph that has been put in here, a little table, and then look at other indicators of is follower count or maybe clout, cred, whatever it might be, and seem sort of influence the score and all that stuff. But this was the bit which also interests me, which is this indexation rate over time. And again, Billy, I don't know if I may be wrong in the assumption here, or John, if you've had a chance to read this, which is basically it doesn't matter that your tweet was sent 5 minutes ago. What matters is a whole load of other factors. Because actually, what have we got here? So the tweet index after 7 days were actually taken into account more than those within the last 24 hours. So it's got to have some sort of influence as a tweet in itself. Is that fair to say?
Well, yes. Every tweet, everything we post online has a life cycle. So I guess that one of the factors may be how does this tweet perform within a certain span of time. So yes, I think that this may be the case here.
Yeah, it definitely looks like they're taking into account the activity that occurs on a tweet to determine whether or not it's worth showing in results. It's like if a tweet is getting a lot of favorites and a lot of retweets and a lot of comments and activity, the likelihood is that's going to be more interesting to more people. And so the newer tweets, there's just not enough data yet to show in search, I would think.
Yeah, that's what I took away. I mean, it certainly seems from this, and please, guys, do go in there and have a read of it. It's an incredibly interesting report to read, and
very good article.
It's fantastic, isn't it? I mean, it even goes to say that they actually use a quote. So, what type of content does Google prefer to index? And basically, images and hashtags are definitely up there. So, tweets containing images and hashtags get far more chance of being indexed. But the interesting one for me, the real takeaway from that was that it's the tweets with the inbound links which they have found as being very influential for Google. So, and I thought that was interesting because I wanted clarification on that. Because what is an inbound link to a tweet, right? That was my question.
Well, that would probably be just like an inbound link to any website. That's the link graph that Google uses as a large part of its ranking algorithm among a billion other factors, but it is essentially a link, I would suspect in this case, a link from a site with a high authority to that tweet, right? It would sound like that.
Yeah, I was just wondering whether or not it included embedded tweets.
Yeah?
Yeah. Does that make sense? So,
it probably would.
See,
it's a total guess. We need to ask Eric.
Well, I did, and he was like, in my opinion, it doesn't. So really, a quality tweet, i.e. to be chanced of getting indexed by Google, is one which has got an inbound link, like a website. It shows authority because people are actually linking to an individual tweet. I find that an incredible ranking factor personally. I mean, I don't know if any of my tweets have been linked to. I don't know how I would find out if my tweets have been linked to personally, and that shows a bit bad. It
may also show something else, that if all those who are in front of their screen watching Google Analytics all the time see a sudden surge from Twitter in their traffic, they will be more eager to advertise maybe on Twitter. So maybe we have to, consider this as well.
Yeah, that's true.
And haven't they recently talked about Twitter showing ads in their Twitter feeds on on third-party sites? Is that something?
Well, yes, Twitter has apparently collaborated with Flipboard and Yahoo Japan to show Twitter ads on their platforms. There's some sort of a new strategy here to show that Twitter ads are really worth it.
Yes, certainly in the end of their report, they're basically saying that, you know, the more chance you're going to get is by advertising with Twitter. So, I mean, absolutely, it seems to me this is a total win-win. Mark Traphagen has actually dropped into the event page and actually put a link to their study, which is fantastic. So, Mark, thanks for that. That's on there on the event page if you guys are looking at it. So that's all good. And also for those of you who are interested, it is on our Showcase app as well. So that's in there. Now, Jeff has made an interesting point. Jeff, I apologise. I don't even want to start guessing how to pronounce your surname, so I do apologise. Basically saying, you know, is Google starting to really rule our lives? I mean, you know, literally everything is being governed at the moment by Google. So, and we're also, are we now governed by a set of algorithms?
Who knows? We've got algorithms training algorithms at this point.
It's predictive analysis.
Oh, that's a better one. I prefer predictive analysis than algorithms.
No, it's good.
Okay, well, I think what an algorithm is better than predictive?
No, I'm saying predictive analysis is a much better description than algorithms training algorithms. That's too cumbersome.
Tell me about it. Not good at all. All right, well, look, let's move on from that. So, one of the things, so we've obviously talked about Twitter's growth strategy, because obviously that is, for me, that's a primary reason for doing this for Twitter. Google, I understand, get an awful lot out of this from a real-time search perspective. Very interesting move, very clever move from them. I want to talk about this Twitter retention thing, because Vili, there's been this move about something called an instant timeline. So can you just explain for people exactly what the instant timeline means?
Of course. So yes, Twitter hit again the headline. So what is an instant timeline and how it works? What we all know until now is that when we sign up for Twitter, we usually are shown a list of interests, and we check, you know, the interests that we like, and we are shown then the accounts that correspond to our selections, so that users can get started with Twitter by following accounts, and, you know, they start seeing things on their timeline. Apparently now this won't happen. So what will be happening from now on is that once a user signs up for the service, Twitter will scan its address book, well, given that the user has given permission for Twitter to do so. Twitter will scan the address book of this specific user, see which email addresses have already registered with Twitter, see what these accounts tweet about and what type of accounts they follow. And so new users and newcomers will get to see tweets and content right from the start without even following anyone. So if you have on your address book people that are interested in Premier League, you will see tweets about the Premier League. If your friends like Taylor Swift, you will see about Taylor Swift. So yes, this is a bit of a gray zone here, but as we all know, and we have thoroughly discussed, Twitter struggles with user growth and retention. Instant timelines could help users, you know, say, okay, this is what I'm doing here, and, you know, get a good idea of what Twitter is all about and not feel lost in the platform. In my opinion, Twitter tries to offer relevant and timely content here, and it hopes to beat its problematic growth and user retention. Will it succeed? Will it work? Well, I don't know, because for me right now, Twitter has been stigmatized as a microblogging platform. Yes, there are Twitter cards. Yes, there are all sorts of things, videos, pictures, everything. But for me, basically, it's a content problem. Here, I think that Twitter tries to diversify its what it offers to attract more users. It's no coincidence that in the last weeks there have been some reports saying that Twitter prompted verified accounts to stop using Instagram to post their pictures and start using Twitter to post their pictures, because it wants to attract different type of content. Different type of content will attract more users. And for me, this could also explain why Twitter is also changing its homepage to offer, instead of having the typical welcome screen, welcome to Twitter, sign up, you have Barack Obama tweets, and you have NBA superstars tweets, and you have featured content and everything. That's it.
I think it's a very clever move, because one of the problems that, as you've mentioned quite rightly, Vili, I mean, there is a classic retention problem. And it's no good Google doing a big growth strategy and getting people more aware of Twitter and understanding that they're, John, perfect example of them, being the world's landing page. Classic line. I love that, John.
I think it's yours. I don't know. We'll have to go back and watch that.
I'll give it to you. It's no point being that if you can't keep the users. And I mean, I'm just reading a statistic here now. It's a little bit out of date. It's from 2013, but this was just at the point of the IPO, so it goes back that far. And it said here that of the 80 million Twitter accounts registered in the last 3 months, only 3 million turned into daily active tweeters. So there's a problem there, right? I mean, what's that attrition rate? I mean, that is monumental. That is, what's that, 5-6% of people turn into active Twitter users, which is where they're going to monetize these guys. So if you're not retaining them, you're not going to be able to monetize them and use them as, actual clients, which ultimately Twitter is a business now. It needs to drive revenues, it needs to generate revenues. So for me, the fact that these people that may be joining Twitter, suddenly if they're seeing, without doing anything, it's a very friendly first experience, which is, oh, that's my friend Bob, or they know I'm interested in gardening because my friend Bob is interested in gardening, and they're showing all my gardening tweets. Oh, actually, hang on a minute, I get this now. Okay, I understand that it's not all about who had dinner with whom, or some famous person is doing this, because I'm not interested in that famous person. But if it knows that I'm interested in, as you said, some NBA basketball star, Vili, it means something to me. It's contextual. I get Twitter immediately.
It's the semantic web.
Yeah.
It's Twitter finally understanding the importance of relevancy to the audience, to the individual. It's not about what's going on in the world necessarily. It's about what's interesting to the person on Twitter. That's what retains a user. If they're interested in NBA stars, if they're interested in Taylor Swift, then that's what they'll see, and that's what will retain them. But if they're interested in gardening, if they're interested in cars or whatever, that's what they'll see instead, and they'll be, and again, retained, because it's very personal. Google has understood this for the last 2 or 3 years, if not more. And to see other companies finally getting on board is good, because without it, you will be surpassed quickly. If Twitter had not done this, they would fall out of use very quickly. But it's good, because I like Twitter. I think it should stick around, so I'm glad they're doing this.
Yeah, let's see if users will adopt it.
Yes. Yep, and they'll stay once they do, They'll, like you said, adopt. Instead of having 80 million new accounts and only 3 million of those actually sticking around, you'll have much larger numbers sticking around, because it's personal. It's useful to a person.
Yeah, it is. It is. Well, look, I mean, it brings up one of my favorite words in marketing, which is contextualization. I don't even know if it's a word, but I know context is. The fact is, if Twitter suddenly get this whole context issue, they may start winning some battles with people who just go, I don't get Twitter. Yep. People should get Twitter. I've always used it personally as an education platform, but I'm now more, well, actually, no, it's a lie. I've used it as an education platform. I've used it as an influencer marketing platform. And for me, it's a win-win. It always has been. If suddenly they start to look to a 5-year, 10-year plan where people start understanding it, they will win the battle, because at the moment they're not, and they're going to slowly die away into something that everybody remembers. So I think that's 2 really interesting news coming out this week. Well, look, I mentioned contextualization. There's 3 main words that I use in a lot of the strategy discussions I have with clients, and one of them is contextualization, one of them is content curation, and the other one is content creation. And those 3 things really make a lot of the strategies that we build that clients need to understand that it's not about broadcasting. Actually, I should say it's 3 C's and an E. So It's curation, creation, contextualization, and engagement. And if they can get those four, if you can come up, communication, that's it, the 4 C's, communication. Christ, I thought 3 C's and an E. That doesn't really work. What was my 4th one? So that's what it's all about. Now for me, and I'm going to sort of, as a really smooth link, which was terrible, that was a really bad link, wasn't it? Talk about curation here for a second, because I want to bring Chris in. Hi, Chris.
Hi, James.
You had to wait a little bit of time. But look, so yeah, curation. You have got to, in my opinion, stop broadcasting out there. And if any businesses still believe that they just promote, they're losing the battle, and they will. And part of it is curating. So one of the biggest problems that I have a lot of the time when I'm dealing with clients, and anybody for that matter, is this whole concept of giving to receive, right? You've got to give valuable contextual information to others to make you appear as the center of that topic, of that subject. And that's what it's all about. That is social and digital marketing. And one of the things they often come back to me is saying, well, why do I want to direct anybody to somebody else's site? They're not coming to my site. They're going to somebody else's site. What's all that about? And it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I stumbled across Sniply and Chris's representative. And I'm not going to say anything else because I will waffle on. Chris, tell us what Sniply is and why it should be a winner for people who curate like I do.
Exactly. So content curation, obviously, as you mentioned, is all about kind of connecting with your audience, and kind of your social media strategy is all about how you kind of deliver value to the readers, to your audience that you get, and then obviously, hopefully, capturing some of that value for yourself. And the main kind of way that people deliver that value is by kind of curating, finding topics, becoming an influencer in a space, and sharing those articles. And obviously, creation has a element, but you can't create enough content to satisfy this audience. People are reading a lot of content every day, and you just can't possibly create enough. So curation is kind of the solution, right? And so people share other people's articles, and it's a great way to kind of expose their audience. And you bring an interesting point, which is how do you kind of measure return on investment for that? There's kind of a waffly kind of way, which is, people will like your brand, people will like your social account, people will continue to follow you because they find it useful, and then every once in a while you could just put in your own kind of ad. Like you'll just slip a little ad into their Twitter newsfeed, and hopefully they don't get too mad, and they'll just kind of maybe click on it. And so it's something that we...
That's so fluffy, isn't it? And maybe they might just click on it. It's if I'm understanding correctly, and I can't remember who came up with the principle, it's the whole 4-1-1 principle, right? Which is for every one bit of content you're creating, you should be retweeting or replying at least once, and you should be sharing 4 other bits of curated content. That's the fluffy philosophy that a lot of people have had.
Exactly, and it kind of fits into this whole thing about social media being social. It's not just a megaphone that you're shouting at your audience. It's about how do you bring kind of this community, this influence group together. And so one of the challenges with that is how do you measure return on investment, and how do you kind of get value out of sharing that content? And it's an interesting dilemma on both sides, because obviously publishers are looking for people to redirect their content. They're looking for influencers to share their content. So it's a problem on both sides. So with Sniply specifically, and I'll just turn on a little demo here with my screen share here. While you're
doing that, Jeff, thanks for your comment, by the way. It just says nice picture background, Jeff. Chris.
Glad you like it. So you can see my screen there, right?
Yeah, got it.
Yeah, got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what would you do is you share a story. Here's an article by Sprout Social, and this is an article that Social Media Examiner shared yesterday, and they share this content because it obviously fits with their group, and what we've done with Sniply is allowed them to add kind of a small call to action. So if you see in the bottom corner here, I'm not sure if that's on the screen.
Yeah.
Sniply adds just a little kind of overlay, if you want to call it that. In the bottom corner, you can add a little message, you can add a link, and then you can click on the button, and it would go back to a Social Media Examiner landing page. So while Social Media Examiner is curating this content, while they're sharing this content, they have just a little plug that can bring their readers, bring their audience back into their fold. So that's the idea of Sniply. It's obviously a little more broad than that. We do offer different types of snaps. We have kind of different formats that you can do, and customized colors and all that, but the basic idea is you're sharing content, you're curating all this, you're driving traffic to these sites, and we allow you to keep your brand and share a little bit of that experience along the way.
I mean, just to put this into context as well, so it's patently clear. The one way that, for example, we're now starting to use it is if we're talking about certain articles, which we have done today, is the week leading up to the Hangout, is that we will then share the article we're going to be talking about, and the little sniply there, right at the bottom of the page, is saying, look, if you want to hear us discuss this, watch our live discussion. And what it means is that you're giving contextual information to people, but at the same time, you're giving them that call to action in the bottom left-hand corner. And if I'm correct, Chris, and maybe you can just explain this to me, it's basically putting a little bit of information on somebody else's page that is a call to action back, right? I mean, is there anything technological that anybody needs to understand of how to use this, or can you just explain how Fred blogs
can share a Sniply link?
Yeah. So the process is, and what we do a lot is we try to fit with existing workflows. There's a number of social media discovery tools, like content discovery tools. There's a number of content sharing tools. So there's Sprout Social, there's HubSpot, there's Hootsuite, there's Buffer. And so what we do is we kind of plug into those different tools. And so we have an extension, and when you put that in there, as you share it, there'll be just a little prompt, and you can add a call to action to that link as you share it. And what just kind of pops up is just an overlay, and you can kind of visually edit it. So you don't have to kind of worry about what is it going to look like to my audience. You kind of see a visual preview as you do it, and we tie directly into that sharing experience that you're already doing. What we do generate is a custom kind of Sniply link. So in some ways, it's like a link shortener, like Bitly or you know, an equivalent one like that. So it's a snip.ly/abc. So we do generate that link, and that's what would show up. But you know, that's the basic idea of how it works. Is we kind of just generate a new link, which is the background website is totally untouched. We don't load any of that. We're not scraping anyone's site. But the original website stays the same. There's just a little overlay in the corner.
And just actually, fun enough, just to bring that up again to clarify how I've been using it recently, is that I think with the account that I've got, I have two different profiles, for want of a better word, and I generally share two different sorts of articles. So I share articles on digital and social marketing, and so when I share that, my message is one thing. And if I'm sharing something on the world of technology innovation, when I'm sharing that, it gives me the option to flick between the social media call to action I have or the technological social media call to action. Sorry, the innovation call to action that I have. So it allows you to basically flick between the different profiles. I mean, it's a win-win, surely, right? I mean, if you are curating articles, it allows you to have the call to action back to where you want it to go, right? I mean, that's the reason for doing it, yeah.
For sure, it's and it can go where any link we want. Obviously, we're discussing this in the kind of a social media realm, but you can definitely put this link in emails. You can put it in. People have put it into different ad campaigns. So anywhere a link can go, you can kind of just add that extra layer that just gives you a little bit more visibility.
And I think, if I'm correct, it's got Sprout Social and Buffer integration as well, right? So
we have about 40 integrations now. So most likely, whatever tool you use, we've got support for it.
Cool. Before I bring in Jeff's question about analytics, because I'm sure we can analyze things, so that's fine. I'm going to be a little bit contentious because I think we've got to in this sort of instance. I put it out there that we're having a chat with you guys today, and some people are coming back. I mean, literally, even now we've got a couple of people just going, man, this, Sniply's awesome, it's great. Villy, I think you must have used it before, so you know how good it is. I like it. But there is a mentality, there's an ethical or a moral issue here, which is it necessarily right if we are sharing other people's articles to then have our call to action on their article? Is it right to do it? I mean, Chris, I'm sure you've been asked this before, right? I mean, what's your what's your view?
And it has been something that and we've seen we've grown a lot more popular just in the last kind of month, and so a lot of this is kind of surfaced, which is different people have different opinions on it. Some people are very kind of sensitive. That's their website. We're kind of blurring the lines between someone else's website and your website, and there's a little bit of kind of unfamiliarity there that we need to prove. So the largest thing that we're addressing right now that we're working on is right now for publishers, for people who own the website, it's a little bit opaque. So unless you kind of know who's sniffing your website, you don't really see it, and that's definitely a weakness that we're addressing, which is I have a website. I want to see, what have people been putting on my website, and because we don't have that right now, there's a little bit of a fear. There's an unknown, right? You don't know what's happening. So we're really addressing that to allow for a publisher dashboard. You can just put in your website, and we'll show you kind of what Sniply has been doing on your website, as well as like some analytics and all that, to try to kind of allay those fears that Sniply is doing something unknown.
But it's funny, isn't it? Because I don't know. There's an art. I've got here. Ralph has just said, "Is it ethical?" No. It's funny. I have a funny opinion on this. I sort of sit on the fence a little bit because I can imagine there are some people, as a publisher myself, would think, "Hang on a minute. So somebody is sharing my content only to drive content back to their own call to action, right?" Do you know what? If it gives people the confidence to share content, my content, I'm absolutely for it. Because, I mean, I don't know what you think, John and Villy, on this.
They might not have otherwise done it.
Exactly,
You know
that's my point.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, it's a call to action. It won't actually convert into an action. You give people the chance to discover content, and it's all about content discovery, really.
Absolutely. I mean, if every single one of my clients who literally come to me and say, "We don't want to share other people's content because it might be going to competitors and it might be, sending people to other different websites. Why do I want to do that?" And if I can then go back to them and say, "Yeah, but hang on a minute," you can then still say, "Look, if you really like this article, this is what I do. If you really like this article, I write an awful lot about this. Come and check this out." For me, it's a win-win, right? And I think, Chris, you said it really well there. It blurs the boundaries. At the moment, we have two distinct parts to strategies for social marketing and building your own audience, which is you either create articles or you curate articles. That's it. What you guys have done in the middle, and incidentally, I must just make a point. I don't get anything out of this other than what you guys get. You guys are right in the middle, right? Which is you're almost encouraging people to share more. And any publisher, any website content creator, blogger, should be aware that if it gives people the right or the confidence to share your stuff. Sure.
And look, if you think about it in terms of, let's say I'm sitting in the room with a friend, and I'm sharing an article with them. We're looking at the same screen together, sitting next to each other, and I say, "Oh, this is interesting. Here, I talk about this. Today I made a post," and we look at another screen. It's because I have brought that audience to the content. I feel like my opinion is relevant to to them, and so I have. It seems to me every ethical right to show them other content that's related. It's my friend, just as a kind of a different perspective. On social media we think of it as all very virtual, but if it were someone sitting next to me, it would seem very natural for me to show them other content that's related.
Yeah, and on a second level, it could be a good step to forge synergies. I mean, a website drives traffic to another website via Sniply, and this could, bring two websites into collaboration and into communication. Thank you for what you've done. Let's do something together.
There's a couple of interesting things coming in here on the event stream, which I think I sort of warrant bringing in. Susan says here, she says, "I think it depends on what your call to action is." Yeah, you're probably right. Ethically speaking, I know for a fact what I share is very contextual to what I produce as content as well. And so my interest is purely in informing people of what is out there and what I hope is interesting to them. I wouldn't bother doing it otherwise, and I definitely pick and choose what I snip. And she puts, if the goal is to continue the conversation, I think that's great. If you're trying to hijack the site for your own sales, then to me it's questionable. Absolutely. But you know what, Susan? That's the same in everything to me. If you're doing your PPC advertising and you're pitching on your competitors' keywords, same thing, right? It's a question of ethics.
And you're shooting yourself in the foot with that behavior.
Yeah, you do.
This is a very short-term, short-lived thing to do. You just get noticed as a spammer right away. People uncircle you, unfollow you. The market, to me, has an equilibrium. If you do things like that, your audience disappears. So it's not benefiting you at all, really. And I think people will see that, hopefully, and just not do it, because when you're doing it, it just creates noise that's not useful to anyone. Anyway.
Well, I'll tell you what, let me just bring in a couple of questions again from the stream, because it all relates back to the analytical side. Obviously, Chris, would you mind just showing us the analytics that we can get? I don't know if you've got that available there. And while you're perhaps pulling that up, I've got a question here from Jeff, because I don't know the answer on this one. He just asked, so the original website that you're sharing, does it get a view in Google Analytics or not?
Yeah, so we don't affect how the page loads. We don't do anything with that. So all the analytics, all the tracking, everything that you'd commonly expect with it, for the website load, it doesn't change any aspect. So yeah, all the analytics work completely normally. I'll give you a quick preview of just here on what our analytics looks like. So we obviously, when you have a link, you can add a message, you can change it. What we do show you is just a couple of overview kind of statistics. This is for a specific link that we shared specifically, so you can see how many clicks we received on it. You can see how many people clicked on our call to action, which we call a conversion, and then you can see just basic statistics on what happened. And this is what we're exposed to, which is how long did somebody stay on that site that you shared. And then essentially what the bounce rate is, so if they left within 10 seconds. So we expose those kind of analytics at a high level. Obviously, if you have a different call to action, let's say it takes an email, we'd have a list of emails and expose that as well.
There you go. So it's you've got that back end bit as well, which is obviously good for the brands if they're going to be doing this. So that's good. I mean, you know what? We've only got a couple of minutes left on this. Chris, it's probably worth just coming off the screen share. There you go. Do you know what? It is a tricky one. I think it really depends on your own motivations and whether you're doing it for the right reasons or the wrong ones. Sorry, I'm just moving, so things going. And there's some other interesting points. Ralph, you make a good point there about charging advertising on your site and whether you circumnavigate it. And Nicholas, obviously, you made a good point there as well about it looking like a call to action from the site owner. Yeah, I see where you're coming from. I think it fundamentally depends on you and your ethos. If you're doing it for the right reasons and you're adding value to the people that you are sharing the information to. And for me, that's everything that I try and do. And I judge, stupidly, I try to judge everybody by the way that my methodology works, which is for every bit of content that I share, for every bit of content that I write, so my content curation and creation, everything is about the end user, which is if I'm going to add value to their experience on Twitter, their experience, not my experience, their experience. And everything that I am then asking them to do, again, if I'm asking questions of them, if I'm asking them to click on another link from there using Snipply in this example or something else, then for me I'm adding value to the experience of what I'm giving them. And that for me only has a secondary effect on what I'm trying to do, is becoming an influencer and authority in that particular field of that particular content that I'm sharing. So I think it fundamentally depends on who you are as a marketer and what you're doing. And if your ethics are in the right place, fundamentally, personally, and I'm sitting off the fence here, I see it as a very good thing. So, interesting. Okay, look, it's coming up to the hour. We're gonna end on that. I just want to make my final mention, which Villy and I didn't get a chance to really talk about, which is there's a couple of links in. Have I got it on here quickly so I can show you? No, I haven't. There's a couple of links, interestingly from the UK government side, and in the UK government, there's been a massive call at the moment for. They basically, Twitter have reported a huge surge in requests for information, and this whole transparency of social side is getting questioned again, and whether or not we are being looked at by the governments and whether we are being searched for and all this sort of stuff. And it brings this whole, again, do you know what's funny? A very passionate ethical and moral argument about whether or not the whole freedom of speech thing, should the likes of Twitter, Facebook, and so on and so forth give information over to the government. A couple of weeks back on this very show, we argued about governments are getting very, very sort of unhappy about the people like WhatsApp with encrypted messages. They can't read things. So there was an article on the Showcase app for you guys to have a look at, which, I mean, it's quite staggering. So Twitter has seen a massive surge in interest in requests from governments. They're up to now nearly 3,000 a year of requests for information from accounts. Interestingly, of over half, I would say almost 60% of those requests are from the US government, and 80% of those are actually approved by Twitter to give the information away. The second largest requester is Turkey, interestingly. And just to put this in numbers to show you the size gap between the US government and anybody else. So of the 2,871 requests for Twitter to give away information, 1,622 were from the US government and 80% were approved. The next largest was Turkey, and I'm going to use the term here, only 356. So a massive gap between the US and Turkey, which is the next largest requester. But interestingly, you could almost determine that the US, it's more for information gathering and not necessarily innocent. But in Turkey, 356 were requested and 0 were authorized. So 0% were authorized. So you sort of got to ask questions there about the Turkish government and what they want out of these social networks. And there is a particularly good article from The Telegraph, another UK, what we call a broadsheet, a very, supposedly high-level paper, which actually puts this as a very good interactive graph where you can see globally from a government perspective who's asking what from whom. And that includes both Twitter and Facebook. And interestingly, the biggest request for Facebook restriction, Facebook this time, is India, with nearly 5,000 requests for restriction of posts, which I thought was quite interesting.
Well,
go on, Philly.
Yeah, let's take these things one by one. First of all, these stats we're reporting and correspond to the last semester, the second semester of 2014. If we go back, it has been a very turbulent semester. We had social unrest, political unrest. We had the MH17, which led to collision, diplomatic collision, and all this stuff. We had terrorist threats and all this stuff. So for me, it explains why there's a surge in government requests for users' data. So why Twitter? For me, there are two approaches here. First of all, we all use social media. Lots of people every day sign up for social media and they record their lives and thoughts there. So it's easier for governments and all those analysts to identify trends and see maybe suspicious things and patterns developing on Twitter. The other thing is that Twitter has a rather simplistic privacy approach. You either have an open account or a locked account, and you have the private messages. So if you're on an open account and you express something that may be considered as suspicious, it's easier for all those analysts to track it. Now, we see the difference between US government requests and Turkey government requests. The main difference here is that Twitter tries to ban Twitter. Turkey tries to ban Twitter. So this won't be accepted anyway. So I think that they're just requesting user data that support Twitter, and they don't want the service to be shut down again in this country. On the US side, on the other side, I think they are more trying to identify suspicious patterns and suspicious tweets and data, identify possibly terrorist threats or terrorist attacks on the making. I can only speculate here, but this is my take. That's why maybe Twitter is more willing to collaborate with the US government than with the Turkish government. On the other hand, we have India. You told us that they have around, 3,000, 5,000 requests. Well, it's a country that has 1 billion citizens. So it's only logical that India will also be part of the game, part of the circuit. Let's see.
Yeah, I agree. Well, look, I'm going to try and finish off on that. I'm just bringing in sort of one final thought, really, which is today's been an interesting one for me because when you start a hangout off like this, you don't expect to find themes necessarily that come out of a discussion. And certainly today I've seen two, which is number one, which I sort of expected, which was a theme of Twitter. Twitter, yet again, seems to be really pushing itself forward for things, which I think is great. But for me, there seems to be two strategies, which is massively clear. Growth and retention. They are the two paramount important things for Twitter to grow. that has been one theme today with their instant timelines and their relationship with Google. I think amazingly important, and we're going to see some interesting things over the next 6 months. The second one is that of this whole word of ethical and moral issues surrounding it all. We've got what I think at the moment is a very good tool with Sniply and how it's working and how it's operating. Yes, there are ethical issues there, and whether or not you're happy with that or not is up to you as a blogger. And this is the point which Susan picked up on. For me, it's about adding value to them, the people that you're sharing the information to. If you've got valid reasons to do so, fantastic, let's put it out there. And secondly, the ethical issue here, again, about the whole government and getting involved with what we're doing here. So I think that's another important thing to follow. So I'm going to have to finish on that. There are some questions which are coming up in the event stream, which I know I'm going to go definitely back in there and argue. Jason has just popped in a message on my Hangout call. Jason, it's too late to bring that in, but I'm certainly going to be interested in discussing that afterwards as well with you directly. Look, let's chat about it. Let's discuss. This is what this show is all about. It's about bringing you the latest news and tips and tricks, good bits, bad bits, and different bits. It's there for discussion. You know, that's what social media is all about. We're all passionate about it, and that's why we've overrun. So I just want to say, look, guys, thank you for lending me your time, especially you, Chris. Obviously, thank you, mate. I wish you all the success with it all. John, I wish you the success as always. And Vili, you know, thank you for the time. Well done. Good debutantes from Chris and from Vili today. So well done, guys.
Thank you.
That was great.
Thanks, James.
No problem.
Bye.
And most importantly, thanks to you guys for tuning in once more. It's always a joy and a pleasure to bring it all to you. So please join me in 2 weeks' time. We've got Ryan Hanley launching his new book, which has been a long time coming. Bless him. He's put an awful lot of effort into it. Content Warfare is just out. Reading it now. Fantastic book. Do go and get it. Alongside some other special guests which are joining us as well. So that will be a good and action-packed show in 2 weeks' time. So thanks, guys, and join us then. See you later.